Hey guys, it's Ben. Welcome to the channel. I'm not really sure what to do with the introduction, so I'm just going to jump straight into it. Basically covering round one, which of SuperCoach BBL12, which has the three DGWs, the Strikers, the Stars, and the Thunder. So jumping right into it. Starting off with Matt Short, basically was the star of last season. Opened the batting, got some overs. If he's got that role still, pretty much need to have. He's likely going to come off at least one innings, so got to have him, despite his pretty expensive price tag. Rashid Khan's a lock. Cameron Boyce is injured. Thornton is an interesting one. He probably does play. Not 100% sure because the team hasn't been announced. The 13-man squad hasn't been announced. Obviously, the XI hasn't been announced yet. Thornton, I think, has had a pretty good start to the season with South Australia, but is pretty expensive and not necessarily a lock. It doesn't have the best job security in the side. Could see him possibly missing out in the second round or missing out later on and force you into a trade. Peter Siddle, I think, is a pretty good price tag, and I think it's a good price for him, even though he's getting a bit older. I think his captain hasn't been announced yet, but at 150k, I think he bowls the death overs, and pretty much a lock for me. Where's Ego? A bit like Thornton, he's got a lot more experience than Thornton, but whether he has that sort of job security that he's going to play every game, as well as his goes for lots of runs too. So Wezega may not be the best option, the most reliable option that is. Conley Grandhome, he's a pretty popular option, I think. He's batting at 5 and is listed as an all-rounder. Only issue I see is he hasn't really bowled much, at all recently, and is not that threatening with the ball. So I sort of see him just as a number 5 batter, which makes me sort of not really want to pick him. Especially, he probably just comes in and has a quick cameo. So he's definitely could be wrong. If he gets overs, if he gets overs and gets some wickets, definitely is an option there. But I'm not sure if I buy it. Travis Head, Carey, both playing tests. Lynn will be in the top 3. He's pretty cheap and definitely has a high ceiling, although he hasn't really been consistent recently. So with the 3 DGWs in the first round, probably makes it hard for me to go with Lynn just because of his inconsistency. Adam Hose has some really good stats in the T20 Blast, but I think just the unknown of him not playing Australia, not playing against his bowlers, I'm not sure if I can really pick him first round. Although the price tag makes it pretty low risk. I think there's just some other better options. Jake Weatherald probably bats in the top 3. Don't think is really an option though. Hasn't really done anything for the last couple of seasons. Thomas Kelly, he's not too bad. He had a good breakout season last year, but probably bats too low. I think he's going to be batting at 6. Don't see him getting too much higher than 6, which is unfortunate. It makes him pretty difficult to pick. Harry Conway is a good bench option. Not sure if he will be playing every game. Yeah, a bit like the other guys. Like the Strikers, they seem to chop and change out their fast bowlers a lot, except for the captain, which hopefully is Siddle. But yeah, Conway could be a good bench, but difficult to rely on if you want to try to field him. Minity probably won't play. Gibson won't play. Hunt won't play. But I could see him come in at some point if Weatherald or somebody else in the top order isn't going too well. And then Harry Nielsen, I think a lot of people have him on the keeper bench. I think there's some better options like Jimmy Pearson or Peter Hanscom. Nielsen just bats too low, probably bats 7 or 8. So yeah, I think you can't really go Nielsen. Moving on to the Stars, who also have the DGW. Glenn Maxwell is injured, obviously. Trent Bolt, pretty much a lock. Should get plenty of wickets. Joe Clark. His form's a little bit iffy. Hasn't scored many runs. But hoping he can come off in one of the 2 games. Hilton Cartwright. I wish he batted a bit higher in the order to make him an option. But with him batting at 5 or 6, pretty much makes it hard to pick him. Brody Couch, I think, is a bit overpriced. Does go for a bit of runs and may not necessarily be a lock in the side. So probably avoid him. Luke Wood, I didn't really think about Luke Wood at all until about maybe yesterday or the day before when Mr. Cricket said it. So once you know Mr. Cricket's talking about him, you got to get him in. But I don't know. I still not completely convinced. He could be a decent bench loop option. I think a lot of people doing that. I'm not too keen. Adam Zampa is a lock at his price. Coulter, someone I was really keen on initially. Just didn't get through. I think he only got through 2 overs in the practice game. Went for lots of runs. And really hasn't played much since his few games last season, where he wasn't amazing. And I think he's very injury prone and also rest. He'd probably be rested. He often is rested. If there's a game back to back, which is starting up here, so he could miss out on the second game. Tom O'Connell won't play. Hinchcliffe's been named in the 13, but probably won't play. Hatch is not named. Stoinis is a lock. Now he's banging in the middle order and probably gets a few more overs. That doesn't change. But yeah, 83k, Stoinis is a lock. Next few, we'll talk about Sam Elliott first. Well, he's obviously not named in the squad. So we got Burns, Larkin, Webster, Tom Rogers. All of them named. I think only 3 of them will play. I think Tom Rogers, if he's opening, you go for him on the bench. If he's not playing, you probably go Larkin. I don't mind Webster and even Burns. Burns probably, if he's batting at 4, is not a bad option. But I don't mind Larkin as he's pretty solid number 3. Doesn't score too quickly, but gets the runs. And Webster might get a ball. And if he's batting at 4, gets a few runs. But definitely Tom Rogers, he looks to be a pretty good cricketer. So hopefully he can get that opening spot locked in with Stoinis out, or Stoinis in the middle order. And Cam, Clue and Kellaway both not named. Kellaway could come in later, maybe in the top 3 for Larkin if he's not going well. So certainly something to look out later in the season. Okay, and the last team we're going to talk about, obviously with the DGW, is the Sydney Thunder. This is a pretty big one because they obviously have the back-to-back doubles for the first 2 rounds. So definitely got to stock up with the Thunder. So obviously Warner's not playing. Sam's pretty much a lock. He's just coming off an injury, so 4 games in 6 days is a little bit sketchy, but I think he's a lock. Jason Sanger had a good last season, gets a bowl, but I think he's had a pretty bad season with New South Wales, so I think you've got to pass him up at this price. Willie's out. Gurinder Sandhu, he had a really good season last year, and I really wanted to pick him, but with Fazal Farooqi probably taking the death overs as well as Sam's, I think Sandhu becomes a bit harder to pick. Doggett was named. Don't think he's going to play though. Tanveer Singh is injured. Hales is a lock after his World Cup. Chris Green is an interesting one. He's had a pretty good start to the season with New South Wales, made his debuts, and he made his first class debut and like returned to the One Day Cup for the first time in like 4 or 5 years. So he's been huge. I'm not sure if he's worth it. I like 120k, like, and especially with the 2 DGWs, he's a pretty good option. Might get a swing of the bat if they get down to him. And he's also the frontline spinner with Usman Khadir not named. So it's really not too bad of an option, actually. Riley Rousseau, I think, is pretty much a lock at his price. He's a bit high variance. Like, can score 100 or 50 one day, the next day scores a duck. I think that may happen multiple times this year. But I think with his ceiling, you have to have him, especially with the 2 back-to-back DGWs. Faruqi, as I said before, probably gets death overs, and has been huge for Afghanistan. So really happy they got picked up, and I'm hoping he can go huge for my SuperCoach team. Khadir wasn't named. Not sure when he'll come back. Hopefully he doesn't take Khadir. Hopefully he doesn't take Faruqi's position. McAndrew, he's been really good for South Australia since moving there like 2 years ago. Only issue, I'd probably like to see him batting a bit higher with that price tag, which I think he could do. Just unfortunately, Thunder have so many all-rounders. But I think I'm probably going to avoid McAndrew. Alex Ross, probably overpriced, may not even play. And if he does, he'll bat too low. Gilks, he's probably the other option for keeper apart from Clark. I don't really rate him. And there's not that much risk, especially with the back-to-back DGWs. But I don't know, I just can't really justify myself picking him. Definitely wouldn't recommend, but I understand why people are going for him. Ben Cutting, just terrible roll. Probably gets dropped at some point. Like, he doesn't bowl and bats like 7 or 8, so don't go for him. Baxter Holt, also pretty bad roll. And he probably is in the XI, but only keeps and bats like a 7 or 8. Ollie Davies, I think he's not going to get a top order role. If he was in the top 3 or 4, definitely would be an appealing option. But I don't think it's going to happen. He also likes to throw his wicket away pretty early on before he gets his 20, which has burned me quite a few times. So I'm probably going to avoid Davies. And then Whiteman, he wasn't named, so that's the Thunder. Okay, looking at the Scorchers, who have the round 1 bye, but then the round 2 double. Definitely want to get a couple of them on your bench. So I'm looking at, obviously, Josh Inglis. He's a lock on your bench. I think everybody probably has him and should have him at 87k. We'll bat top 4, no arguments. Some people are paying up for their bench, going for Faf C, Ashnaga, like Andrew Ty. I don't know. I think you're probably paying a bit too much on your bench. If you can fit it, like, that's great. But I think I prefer to have most of my money on the field and then look to have those guys coming in round 2. So I'm not looking to pay more than 105k. Ashton Turner's not a bad option. Bats 5, could get a bowl, but can't really trust his bowling. Adam Lyth should open the batting and might get a bowl. So he's probably one that I'm really looking at. Just not sure how he's going to adjust, how his batting's going to adjust into the Australian conditions and whether or not he's actually going to get a bowl. Aaron Hardy, he has been talk that he might bat up the order, possibly at 3 with Mitch Marsh out. It's tough. It's a tough one. Like, unless he was locked in, it's hard to have him on your bench for round 1. But if he is batting a 3, I'll be watching the XI and probably trading him in round 2 if that's the case. Peter Hatziglu, He's not a bad option either on the bench. A 95k, has played a bit in England over the off season as well as the T10 leagues. Not a bad and unique sort of option, and should get a couple wickets. Apart from that, Bancroft, Hobson could bat in the top three, but it's hard to tell. Probably not worth the shot. And obviously Green, Morris would not be bad options, but they're in the test team. Okay, looking at players that are only playing one game that I'd look to field. There's only a couple. I'm pretty set at the moment on just fielding 11 DGW players, but there's been a couple I've considered. You've got Josh Philippi. At 168k, it's a pretty good price for him. And with Clark and Gilks both not being the most convincing, he's not a bad option. Just sort of blocks you up with your batting bench, forcing you to have like Hanscom or Pearson, so you don't have to bench Philippi round 2. And then the other option I've got is Shadab Khan, the all-rounder from Pakistan. Bats top 6, will get 4 overs. Had a huge World Cup, SuperCoach wise, got an average of 80 points per game. Something like that. He could definitely replicate that in BBL. Just difficult to sort of fit him in, especially without any double game rounds sort of on the radar. And moving on to like some other considerations for the bench. So obviously you got the Heat double in round 3, as well as the Renegades and Sixers double in round 5. So these a bit more, don't have to worry too much about them, but it's nice to get a bit of a head start. So looking at the Heat, got Swepson at only 107k. I've got him on the bench at the moment. It's not a bad option, I don't think. I had Nisa before, but he's now with the test squad, so it's switched it to Swepson at a similar price. And as well, we got Josh Brown at 42k, which I've been super impressed with. Absolutely lit up the T20 Max in Queensland and scored like 62 of 28 in the intra-club game for the Heat like last week. Even picked up a couple wickets with the ball. So I think if he's named to open, or even just to play round 1, something you definitely got to have on the bench. Moving on to the Renegades, who have like the round 5 double. Sutherland's a super popular pick. He's always pretty popular, but this season he's had a very good start with Victoria. Like he had his maiden ton, and he, just like last week or so, he won the game against New South Wales with the ball. I could definitely see him going huge here, but he's not usually the best in the BBL. Another one, a bit more expensive, Majib Rahman at 111k. While he might have a little bit more price for like a bench option, he's super cheap for his ceiling. I think at one point, I think he started last season at 200k, so 111 is an absolute steal for him. So hopefully he can get back into like the wicket taking form that he was in a couple seasons ago. Another one from the Renegades is Aqiel Hussain. I don't really know much about him. The scene has done a few things recently in the T10. I'd probably shy away, but he's not in bad form at all. So definitely an option. But for me, it's probably something I'm going to wait for a bit to see a bit before I go for picking him. Now looking at the Sixers, there's not too many people that are playing around the right price. There's like Todd Murphy at 69k, which I really like. He's had a breakout season with Victoria, but probably doesn't play ahead of Stephen O'Keefe. So the only person I'm really looking at is James Vince at 99k. He could definitely fit on your batting bench instead of like Tim David, who I also didn't mention, did I? Tim David's also a pretty good option, but James Vince definitely is somebody to think about. Especially a couple seasons ago he was huge in the finals. So if he brings that back, like to any degree, he'll be definitely worth the 99k. And apart from that, that's pretty much all you need to know for round one, I think. Yeah, don't forget about Tim Day because he's an absolute steal, 89k. And maybe if this was not too bad, I'll do it again for round two. Thanks, guys.